I'm Sumeet Kumar. I'm a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm advised by Professor Kathleen Corley, and this is a joint work with Ramon. I'm going to talk about fake news, and in particular, I'm interested in fake news on Twitter. So I'm sure you might have seen these two examples before. The first one is about Pope Francis. He basically backed Trump. That was in news for quite some time. And the another one is Hillary Clinton. She adopts an alien baby. Although those news they're in news, but they're actually fake. But not all instances of news like this are actually harmless, like probably these two. For example, this news, whereas in the Washington pizzeria, because of fake news, there was a real person that went to that pizzeria, went with a gun and fired a couple of shots. So this example of fake news is not innocuous. It basically had some impact on the society. So moving next, we're talking about the domain of online social media security. And this is about what was the securities earlier and what the security is now. So earlier, we were mostly focused on account hacking, malware, spam, and financial scams. So these were like the major areas of social media security. But moving on, these days, apart from these four, we also have manipulation of civic discourse and deceiving people. So these are also becoming like a major challenges, and to improve social media security, we need to take care of them. So moving next, the three main takeaways of my presentation are we need to have a complex data collection strategy to identify the spread of fake news. Primarily, I'm talking about the complex data collection strategy on Twitter. The second is users spreading fake news. We find that they like to mention a lot, especially to get attention of other users. But we also find that they use similar hashtags, which are kind of used in other conversations, other discussions as well. And I'll talk more about them. We also see that bots, and I'm primarily talking about bots on Twitter, are very often used to speed up the diffusion process of fake news. So this is a system design. This is the entire workflow that we built. We start with tweets or Twitter data collection, and we primarily have three different ways of collecting tweets. We have geo-coordinates-based search, we have keywords-based search, and then we have users and actors basically snowballing around some of the users. So once we collect tweets data, we use another component called tweets augmenter, and that augmenter has small different subcomponents which adds additional information to the tweets that we have collected. For example, we have news classifier, we have spam detector, we can add information about where the location of tweets was, so basically from where it's originating. We also can do some sentiment information, and using these we augment the original tweets with these additional information. Once we have the augmented tweets, we take it to our network analyzer where we look at some of the like topics analysis, what are the topics that's being played in these tweets. We also do the network analysis, like what kind of community structure in these tweets. We also look at bots or the botnets. So we figure out if some of these tweets are from the bots or botnets. We also do the propaganda analysis, and we try to detect communities or strong communities that's there in these tweets data. And we use the output of both of these modules to primarily detect whether a tweet is fake or not and how it's spreading. So again, moving back to the collection of data set, we got three tweets data set. The first was based on search terms. The another was snowball search. The snowball search was starting from some users that we got from search terms. The third was based on geolocation search. For the rest of the slides, we are going to focus mostly on the North Sea region, the Ukrainian region, because there is a lot of fake news that's happening there. So we used geolocation around North Sea region. We used fake news data set. We got some fake news URLs from our collaborators who are in Ukraine. We also got data from Kaggle data set. So what we observe from the data set that we got is there is a lot of news, the tweets from Ukraine, Crimea, and we also got some on different events like Euromaidan, and we also have searches based on NATO events. We have around, or actually over 100 GB of data sets, which basically means we have over 3 million tweets. We got tweets searched for URLs. So basically, we are filtering the tweets now that we collected. We filtered it based on fake news. And if we do that filtration, we are left with around 40,000 tweets, which we think are primarily related to fake news. So this is the community that we got. This is just the fake news community. You can see like there are different kinds of network structures here. If I just want to highlight a couple of them, so this is one where we believe this fake news burst. So the nodes over here, the brown ones, they are the users, and the green ones are tweets. So a user over here starts a tweet, and then it spreads around. What we see over here is more of an echo chamber, where a lot of people are kind of discussing fake news. So we see like different kind of community structures in our data set. There are some summary statistics as well. So for example, we realized that in fake news, the mean number of times a URL was shared was much higher than like a general or non-fake news. So fake news tend to be more shared than non-fake news. We also realized that fake news spreaders, they use more mentions. So some of these mentions are mentioned here. Like for some, we got like almost 30% of them where they're mentioning like Ukrainian.ru. And note that this data set is also around Ukraine. So that's kind of more obvious. But in general, we see that there are more mentions that are being used for fake news. So moving next, this is a trend of basically the users are there. This is a scatter plot. On the x-axis, we have fake URL sharing, and on the y-axis, we have non-fake URL sharing count. So this kind of tells us about what fraction of news that's being shared or tweets that's being shared have fake news. So we got some users which are kind of right corner on the bottom here. These are primarily sharing fake news URLs. These are basically the users of interest to us, although there are some users who are sharing kind of both fake news as well as non-fake news. But this is the area of interest. Moving next, we got good pattern in this scatter plot. But if we look at the hashtags, which are also kind of very popular on Twitter, we see that hashtags are not that distinguishing. So those who are sharing fake news and those who are sharing non-fake news, they kind of tend to have similar hashtags. And we believe that's because they want to spread it into different topics or different discussions. So this is a plot of what kind of websites were being used. I think we have some meshing data here as well. But we do observe that these are some of the top 10 website URLs used. And there are a couple of them which are kind of pretty high. And they're very often used just for sharing fake news. So moving next, this was our original fake news data set. We tried to get the dense subgraphs, so some graphs over here and some graphs over here. That can be obtained, and we can basically figure out who are these people. Why is the graph so dense? Often we see that some of these dense subgraphs are related to bots or botnets that are trying to spread it. And we here see one of those dense subgraphs, and we observe that some of these users who are over here are basically bots. So moving next, we'll just try to highlight again like top hashtags. We got that the top hashtags were very similar for the one spreading fake news and the one spreading non-fake news. Like we got Donbass there, we got Russia and NATO there. Coming to top mentions, we got it very different. So the mentions in the fake news were very different from mentions in the non-fake news, and that's because this community is probably very different from the community that's spreading general news. So again, the three main takeaways that we have, there is no simple way to collect tweets that can tell you a lot about fake news. You have to have a different strategy of collecting tweets. We also observe, depending upon the strategy, some of the results that you got could vary. So far, we have observed that users spreading fake news like to mention a lot, and that's primarily to get more users' attention. But they use similar hashtags, and we believe that's because they want to spread to different topics. We also see that there are bots that's being used primarily to spread fake news information as fast as possible. So that's it for my presentations, and I would love to have any questions. Thank you.